Hello, First Book fans and First Book members. I hope all of you can see me clearly. I know some of you may be in rooms full of lots of people where kids are just settling in and finding seats, so I'm just going to give you a couple seconds. You should get quiet because the fun is about to start here. I am Allison Morris, thrilled to be here in front of all of you. I oversee the curation of titles that are available on the First Book Marketplace. I'm guessing most of you out there are familiar with First Book, but some of you may not be. So to give you the quick sort of flyover, First Book is a nonprofit that provides access to low-cost titles and resources for educators and programs serving kids in need. You can learn more about us at firstbook.org, and you can check out the incredible array of books and resources we have available on the First Book Marketplace at firstbookmarketplace.org. It is my great pleasure to welcome you today to our inaugural day of webcast with author Jacqueline Woodson. Many of you, I'm hoping, maybe all of you, are already familiar with Jacqueline's incredible work. She is the award-winning author of 30 titles, and I say award-winning, and I am here in her studio in Brooklyn, New York right now, and this wall behind me is just some of the many awards that Jacqueline has won. She is the current National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, which is another of the awards that she's won, and you will see her shiny medal hanging around her neck when she joins me here in front of the computer. In that role, Jacqueline has been traveling the country sharing the equation reading equals hope times change, and talking with kids about her fantastic new books, The Picture Book, The Day You Begin, and a terrific new novel, Harbor Me, which I'm hoping some of you may have read, and Jacqueline is going to talk more about during this presentation. We are super, super grateful to the Children's Book Council for making this possible for us today, arranging today's visit, to Jacqueline's publisher, Penguin Random House, for bringing her terrific books into the world, and to all of you who are tuning in today and who are Jacqueline Woodson's fans. We are super grateful to Jacqueline for welcoming us into her home today and giving you a glimpse of her studio and of her writing life. And super grateful, again, to all of you for being here with us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to the main event and introduce you to Jacqueline Woodson.
Hey guys, and hey everybody, here I am. It's so nice to be in the room with you, and I wish I could see you, but I can't, but I know you're there because I see a lot of numbers at the bottom of the screen. So thanks for joining me. This is my medal that Allison talked about. That's my dog barking. We have another dog right here on the floor. His name is Shadow, and he's really shadows us everywhere. So I don't know, where should I begin? I'm so excited to get to your questions. I'm so excited to talk to you about Harbor Me and some of my other writing. I'm so excited to tell my dog to be quiet. Toffee, stop! So, as Allison told you, I've written lots and lots of books. I think some of you probably studied me or went to my website or are currently reading one of my books or have read one of my books in the past. I've written Brown Girl Dreaming, which is a memoir about how I became a writer. And Harbor Me, which I think I'm going to start by reading a chapter to you, just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about when I start talking about it. And I'm going to read from chapter 2. The first week of September, the rain wouldn't stop. Rivers ran down along the curbs, and at the corner near our school, cars had stalled in the middle of the huge pools of rainwater. Even though it was still warm outside, our classroom felt damp and a little bit cold. Some of the kids were playing with those spinner things. One boy, whose name I forget, had his head down on his desk. I remember his dark curls, the way they fell over his arm. For some reason, those curls spiraling over his arm and down onto the scratched up desk made me sadder than anything. There were 8 of us then. Our small class had come together because the school wanted to try something new. Could they put 8 kids together in a room with one teacher and make something amazing? 8 special kids? Even though they didn't say it, we knew there was something different about us. We had all been in the big classrooms before, and our learning felt like a race we were losing while the other kids sped ahead. We made believe we didn't care that we learned differently. but we knew we did. And the school knew we did. The school knew we got laughed at and teased in the big yard, and that some days we faked stomach aches and sore throats to stay home. It was only September, so no one knew if this experiment would work. But our teacher, Miss Laverne, was tall and soft-spoken and patient. We loved her immediately. And the school itself had huge windows and brightly colored walls. My uncle said it was one of the best schools in the city. I had been there with Holly since first grade, so I didn't really have any other schools to compare it to. But if nice teachers and rooms filled with lots of windows made something the best, then I guess it was true. By the end of that rainy week, the boy with the curls had moved away, and another girl's mom had come in and fussed about her daughter being smarter than those children, while Miss Laverne shushed her and guided her and her daughter gently out of the room. The girl looked like she wanted to sink into the floor and disappear. We never saw her again, but sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if she had gotten a chance to be a part of the art room. If she had gotten to hear what we heard, see what we saw. After she and the curly-haired boy left, only Miss Laverne and the 6 of us remained. An hour after class started on that Friday, Esteban came in, his head down, his hair slicked wet against his forehead, his Yankees cap dripping with rain. He walked straight to his seat without looking at the rest of us. I watched him sink into a seat so sadly and heavily, it felt like the whole room shivered. His jacket was way too big for him, the shoulders hanging down his arms, the sleeves falling over his hands. I didn't know Esteban yet. I didn't know anyone but Holly, really. But I wanted to go over to him and hug him hard. I didn't care how dripping wet he was. No one should ever have to look that sad. "Do you have a late pass for me, Esteban?" Miss Laverne asked. She was standing at the front of the room, her arms stretched out toward the smartboard. I don't remember what was on it, maybe a globe. Our tiny group that year was a 5th, 6th grade class. This too was a school experiment. "Is everything okay?" Miss Laverne's dark brown face was crisscrossed with worry. Esteban shook his head. "I don't have a pass," he said, his voice breaking. "We think they took my puppy. Nobody knows where he's at." He put his head down on his desk, his face turned toward the window. Miss Laverne went over to Esteban's desk and bent toward him, her hand on his back. They spoke softly to each other. Maybe they spoke for 5 minutes. Maybe it was an hour. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. So much can change in a minute, an hour, a year. So that was chapter 2 of Harbor Me, which I wrote. Jacqueline Woodson, that's me. And I wrote Harbor Me. It took me a while to write that book. At the same time, I was writing The Day You Begin. So I'm usually working on more than one book at a time. Basically, if I get bored with one book, I move to the next one. If I get bored with that, I move to the next one. Sometimes I'm working on 3 books at a time. Right now, I'm only working on 1 book because I finished those 2. And I started writing because I love writing. I've always loved writing. I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was 7 years old. I love story. I love when people told me stories. I love when I read stories. I read really, really slowly and had to read things over and over again before I really understood them. And when I was a kid, I got in trouble for that because the teachers wanted me to read faster. They wanted me to read books that were harder, quote unquote, to read. They wanted me to read at the same level as the other kids in the class are above it. And I really wanted to understand the story. I really wanted to read the story until I could recite it. And that was kind of not allowed. But I always tell people that it takes authors a long time to write books. So we don't want you reading them quickly. And I think even as a little kid, I knew that I wanted to read the book until I understood it. And I wanted to read it until I could learn from the author how to tell my stories. Even though I was too little to know how to say any of that. Now that I'm a grown up, I know that's how I was reading. I was reading as what we call an engaged reader to get a sense of the story. And I was only reading the books that I loved. If I didn't love the book, I wasn't reading it, and I got in trouble for that. But anyway, here I am now. I've written about 30 books, and I still read really slowly. And when I started writing Harbor Me, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the way we learn. I was thinking about the way we think. And I was thinking about all the stuff we have to say to each other that sometimes we don't get a chance to say. So it's a story of 6 kids who are in a room, which they nicknamed the art room, a room to talk, ARRT. It used to be an old art room. Their teacher takes them there, and then for 1 hour a week, she leaves them alone and lets them talk. And the only rule is no cell phones, and no being unkind to each other. And the kids are like, well, what are we going to talk about? We don't have anything to say to each other. And then slowly they start realizing they have a lot to talk about, because you guys have a lot to talk about. Y'all know it. You know, when the grown-ups leave the room, you have a lot to say, not only about us, but about the world. And I think it's what you have to say is really important. So I created these characters. I made them up out of my head. And people are always asking, who are you? Are you Esteban? Are you Thiago? Are you Ashton? Are you Holly? Are you Haley? Are you Amari? Those are the 6 kids in the class. And I feel like there's a little bit of Jacqueline Woodson in every single kid in that class, and in Miss Laverne, and in Haley's uncle and dad. And in every single book I wrote, behind me are a bunch of the books I wrote. And every single one of them, from The Other Side to Each Kindness to Pecan Pie Baby, After Tupac and Dee Foster, Miracles Boys, Brown Girl Dreaming, of course, that's all Jacqueline Woodson and my family. But there is some of me in every single book I write. And I think the thing about writing is you start with what you know. I know your teachers have said this, right? You start with some idea you have or something you know deeply. Maybe you know how to play baseball. Maybe you know how to play Fortnite, or you know how to dress really well, or you're really good at math or science. But you start with that thing you know, and you begin to write about it, and then you see what comes, right? You don't have to think about how am I going to plot this, what's going to happen. The minute you get 2 people talking, boom, your story's beginning. Because soon they're going to probably be arguing with each other. Soon someone's going to have to walk out the room. So when they walk out the room, you're going to have to describe how they walked out the room. If they have a fight, you're going to have to describe what they're fighting about. All of that stuff leads to story. And the great thing about writing, all you need is a pencil or a pen and some paper. If you don't have that, you can talk into a recording device or something. But you all have stories to tell. And I was talking to K through 4th graders earlier, and I was telling them that a long time ago I heard that once you've survived kindergarten, you have enough to write about for the rest of your life. And I really do believe that everyone has stories to tell. It's just a question of starting to tell those stories and getting them on paper, sharing them with other people, and writing them, rewriting them. And I know a lot of people don't like rewriting. I love it. I think it makes the story better. I think it makes it so that when the thousands of copies of Harbor Me go out into the world and one ends up in your classroom or in your hands, you're reading through it and you're not saying, oh shoot, look, there's a typo there. Oh wait, didn't she just say Thiago had on a red shirt and now she's saying that same shirt is blue? She made a mistake here. So rewriting helps me fix those mistakes. I read everything, I write out loud. That really helps me. And I share with people I trust. Because if you share your work with people you don't trust, they might make you not want to write it. They might say mean things about it. They might make you feel bad for writing it. They might assume that you're writing about someone that you know, even though you're not. So it's important to share with people who you really trust, who are not going to say, I don't like that. That's dumb or whatever, but who are going to say, I have some questions. I love this. And it makes me think about this, and it makes me think about this, or it makes me laugh, or it makes me happy. And I wonder what's going to happen with that character. The minute I show someone something and they say, oh, I really love this, but I'm not listening anymore, because that but has shut me. It's made me not want to hear anything else. But if they say, I love this, and I'm still listening. So think about that. Listen for the people who are saying and to you, not but. And ambassador. I should talk about that for a minute. Actually, I'm just lifting it because it's kind of itching my neck because I have this necklace on under it. I don't wear this every day. I'm just wearing this because I'm talking to y'all. The minute I walk away from the camera, it's coming off. But it says National Ambassador on this side for Young People's Literature. And then you turn it over and it has my name, Jacqueline Woodson. And it also has the term, to be as an ambassador, it's a 2-year term. The person who put this award around my neck is Dr. Carla Hayden, and she's the head of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. Not only is she the head of the Library of Congress, she's the first woman to be the head of the Library of Congress. Not only is she the first woman to be the head of the Library of Congress, she's the first Black woman to be the head of the Library of Congress. Not only is Dr. Carla Hayden the first Black woman to be the head of the Library of Congress, she was a librarian at Enoch Pratt Public Library in Baltimore, Maryland, and she is so phenomenal in so many ways. She put lots of books into lots of young people's hands, and if you have a chance, look her up and send her a note and say thank you, because she's fabulous. Anyway, Dr. Carla Hayden put this award around my neck. Jean Luen Yang, look him up. He was the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature before I was. And as as ambassador, I get to go all around the country and talk to people about the importance of literature, the importance of reading, the importance of writing, the importance of telling our stories so that they stay in the world. Now you guys are in 5th grade. How many of you in 5th grade? Touch those buttons because now I can see. I see Michaela raised her hand. I see Rosalind. I can actually see all the people raising their hands. So right now about 50 something of you are raising your hands. So 5th grade. How many 6th graders? Thank you. Wow, lots of 6th graders. How many 7th graders? Nice. Are there any 8th graders out there? What? There is a lot of people out there watching me. That's amazing. Thank you. That's so awesome. Thanks, Dr. Rosalind. Thanks for your notes. I'm actually seeing your notes. I'm seeing that you're from California. You're from Zionville, North Carolina. Wow. There's Bridget, there's Corey. Oh, now y'all are all showing up. Tell me where you're from. Oh, New York is in the house. Guthrie, Oklahoma. Oh, this is amazing. I feel like I've been to so many places in this country. And now Randolph, Massachusetts, I've been there. Farmington, Connecticut, been there. So after I finish talking to you, I'm going to get a printout. West Hartford, Connecticut, Houston. You guys are in the room with a lot of people from a lot of places. And as ambassador, not only do I get to travel to these places by actually leaving my office and going there, but now I feel like I'm seeing you guys, Moncura, North Carolina, South Carolina, just by being in the room with you. So thanks so much for showing up. Graham. Oh, there's Greenville, North Carolina. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, Columbus. So how many of you have read Brown Girl Dreaming? Raise your hand. Okay, there's a lot of Brown Girl Dreaming in the house. Now we're up to 90. So Brown Girl, for those of you who read Brown Girl Dreaming, you know that I grew up in New York City. Before New York City, I was in South Carolina. And before South Carolina, I was in Columbus, and there's Spartanburg, which is near. And right now, where you're talking to me, I'm in Brooklyn, which is also in the room here. And I think I'm going to read an excerpt from Brown Girl Dreaming. You might have some Brown Girl. Sorry, it's on my shelf. Right there. Thank you. That was Allison. Scanning my shelves. Thanks so much. So this is Brown Girl Dreaming. You know, so it has all those medals on it, right? It has the, oh shoot, this is so weird. I think this is supposed to be the Newbery Honor, but look at that. That's crazy. It's just a blank medal. That is bananas. So there's the National Book Award, there's the Coretta Scott King Award, and I don't know what's going on here. Someone who put this book together is mad about something in the Newberries, because that is so just a blank seal. I have to ask my publisher about that. And then for those who haven't read it, when you get to the back of Brown Girl Dreaming, because it's a story about me, there are all those pictures of me as young Jacqueline Woodson. Look how jacked up my hair was in that one. Oh, that was, okay. There's a lot of hair catastrophe going on in these pages, but at the same time, I was kind of cute. Then you get to the pages of my family. That's my sister, Odella, my brother Hope, and my brother Roman. And for those of you who read Brown Girl Dreaming, they're all fine now. Roman, we know he was sick when he was a young person, but now he's much better. So I'm just gonna choose a poem from Brown Girl Dreaming. Halfway Home. I just landed on this. Halfway Home, number 2. For a long time, there is only one tree on our block. And though it still feels strange to be so far from soft dirt beneath bare feet, the ground here is firm, and the one tree blooms wide enough to shade 4 buildings. The city is settling around me. My words come fast now when I speak. The soft curl of the south of my tongue is near gone. Who are those city children? My grandmother laughs, her own voice sad and far away on the phone. But it is a long distance call from Greenville to Brooklyn. Too much money and not enough time to explain that New York City is gray rock and quick moving cars, that the traffic lights change fast and my sister must hold tight to my hand as we crossed to where a small man singing Piragua, Piragua, sells shaved ices from a white cart filled with bottles and bottles of fruit-flavored syrup, colored red and purple, orange and blue. That our mouths water in the hot sun as we hand him our quarters, then wait patiently as he pours the syrup over the ice, hands it to us in paper cones. We'll be coming home soon, Grandma, each of us promises. We love you. And when she says, I love y'all too, the South is so heavy in her mouth, my eyes fill up with the missing of everything and everyone I've ever known. So shout out to my New York peeps, to my Greenville peeps, and to Columbus. So I don't know, I think I'm gonna read some of your questions now and answer them. I don't know if you noticed in that poem that I just randomly turned to, there was a line where I said, we'll be coming home soon. And for those of you who know, I wrote a book called Coming on Home Soon about a mother who goes away during World War II to work on the railroads to make money for her family, and her daughter misses her. So a lot of times when you read a lot of my books together, you can see the places where they intersect. There is another place where this intersects, and I'm gonna just read that to you. And it's a poem called It'll Be Scary Sometimes. My great-great-grandfather on my father's side was born free in Ohio, 1832. Built his home and farmed his land, then dug for coal when the farming wasn't enough. Fought hard in the war, his name in stone now on the Civil War Memorial. William J. Woodson, United States Colored Troops, Union Company B, 5th Regiment. A longtime dead, but living still among the other soldiers on that monument in Washington, D.C. His son was sent to Nelsonville, lived with an aunt. William Woodson, the only brown boy in an all-white school. You'll face this in your life someday, my mother will tell us again and again. A moment when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you. It'll be scary sometimes, but think of William Woodson and you'll be all right. So, the day you begin. I'm just reading this one page. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you. So this book was inspired by William Woodson and that whole thing that happened with him being the only Black kid in his classroom, in his school. So I'm gonna take questions now. I see y'all raising your hands. I wish I knew what you're asking. Can you show us your dog? We have a dog picture that's somewhere. You have it. What breed is your dog? Wow, y'all are so much more interested in those bad dogs, huh? So I have a German Shepherd, and that's her. That's Toffee. She's upstairs waiting. So that's Toffee, who is 9 years old. And she's full German Shepherd. And then I have Shadow, who is a giant. And he's half German Shepherd and half standard poodle. Thank you. And that's him. That's Shadow. He's so crazy looking. Thank you. And my dogs are 9. Shadow is 2, and Toffee is 9. And I knew, like I said earlier, I wanted to be a writer. I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was 7 years old. I just love story. I love telling stories. And I wanted to one day see my name on a book. And boom, there it is. So Chris from Columbus, Ohio, Buckeye. Who are the authors you're reading now? So this book is on my shelf. This is the book on my desk right now. Laurie Hulse Anderson's Shout, which is phenomenal. I love everything Laurie writes. I love this book because it's written in verse, and she's just such an amazing storyteller. And she writes. This is actually a memoir, and it's a memoir in verse, like Brown Girl Dreaming. So I'm just reading it slowly, the way I read everything, and just savoring the story she's telling. So I'm just so excited that Laurie's in the world. I love Jason Reynolds, especially the Track series. I love Kwame Alexander, anything he writes, I read. Rita Williams Garcia, Christopher Paul Curtis. I love Meg Medina. Who else am I reading now? I'm usually reading more than one book at a time because I just like to read a couple of books at a time. And I have books on all the floors in my house, so anytime on another floor and need to pick up a book, it's there. But I can remember the stories. In terms of picture books, of course, I like Mo Willems. I love who was I just reading? Oh my goodness, I love the book Crown, Ode to the Fresh Cut. That's one of my favorite books in the world. My list could go on and on. But when you go to First Book Marketplace, there's so many amazing books there. And probably half of them are books that I've read or love or want to read. Thank you. Okay, have you, give me a shout out and raise your hand if you've read any of those authors I've met. Whoa. I mean, that I've read. Now we're up in the hundreds. Wow, so y'all are in the know about what's happening out there. There's some great writers in the world. Do I read nonfiction books? Yes, I do. So this is memoir nonfiction, but I'm trying to think, what was the last nonfiction? I read a book called Educated for Adults. One of my favorite books in the world. Is considered for adults, but I would say the picture book version of it is Showway, but it's a book called The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. I have, so a lot of the times that I'm reading adult books, a lot of times I'm reading nonfiction. It's adult. Yes, I love The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. Who doesn't? But there's some great stuff. How many awards have I won? I've won hundreds. So I have some on my wall. I have a couple of the National Book Awards, a couple of the Newberries, the Coretta Scott Kings. But a lot of my awards they don't fit in my office. So I have some upstate, but they're everywhere. Some are in my kids' rooms. They don't like that. Martin Young Elementary in Randolph, Massachusetts. Have you experienced times in your life when you felt you were not treated fair or just? I definitely have. You know, it's interesting. I was out walking my dog the other night and it was dark out. And my dog was kind of hidden. I was walking one of the dogs. I can't walk them both at the same time, but my dog was kind of hidden behind the car. So I'm walking her and I'm just kind of walking slowly and I have my hood on and this cop car pulls over and just slows down and the cop glares at me. I'm like, what? And I felt like that was unfair, that someone would think I'm out doing wrong when I'm just out in front of my house trying to walk my dog. There are definitely times when, especially as a young person, I felt like grown-ups weren't listening to me, or I had a point to make and they didn't think I had a point to make because I was young. But one thing that I feel like I've figured out is how to speak up and how to have agency, how to speak for myself so that other people can hear me. And that doesn't mean yelling. That means kind of speaking in a way that someone's going to listen, not speaking in a way that's going to make them do this. Like I said about that but thing, when people say but and I don't listen. So it does help to figure out how to speak up. 8th graders want to know how many kids I have. It's nice and quiet because they're at school. I have a 16-year-old girl named Toshi, and I have a 10-year-old boy named Jackson Leroy. Jackson is in the 5th grade and Toshi is in the 11th grade. If I could have a superpower, what would it be? I don't really want a superpower, but if I needed to fly, I guess I would want to lift up and fly. I like to think of writing as my superpower. But yeah, it's funny because I guess you read Harbor Me about the superpower because they talk about their superpowers there. From Rebecca Bromley at Grove Junior High School. What advice would you give students who struggle with writing? I think that one thing I would say is that writing's a muscle and it's important to use it every day. So just write a little bit each day. It can be one sentence. It doesn't have to be a whole long poem or chapter of a book. Just one sentence. If you feel stuck, go back and read from your favorite book. If you don't have a favorite book, go back and read from a picture book. Just choose one that looks like it might be written well. You learn to write by reading, reading the same books again and again, and you learn to write by writing. So just write. If you can't think about anything to write about, just write about how you began your day. What happened? I got up, brushed my teeth, or I didn't brush my teeth, or I got up, didn't want to come to school. Just let your mind go. And when you write, make sure the first time you write something down, say, no one is ever going to see this. So what would you write if no one was ever going to see it? And when you write that down, you can tear it up. Teacher can't touch it. You can put it in your bag and sock it away for later. Or you can go somewhere and just reread it and see if it's something you feel safe sharing with the world. And if it's not, throw it away, but maybe the next thing, maybe it'll help you write the next thing that will feel a little more safe. Do you think your children would like to write books? I don't think so. Do your children read your books? Not so much. Sometimes my daughter had to read Another Brooklyn, which is my adult book, for her classroom. And my son read Harbor Me because he wanted to be on the audio book. But for the most part, nah, there are other people. Marblehead, Massachusetts. Are you sensitive how you handle pushback from editors? My editor's name is Nancy Paulson. She's the best editor in the world, and we've been working together for like 15 years, and we're friends. So if she says something's not working, I argue with her, and then I go back and look to see if it's working or if it's not working. But if someone has questions, Nancy usually asks me questions. She doesn't say this is not working. She says, well, what is Esteban going to do now? Or what happened to his dad? Or so why did Ashton's family move from Connecticut? And then I begin to understand what's missing in the novel. From Miss Shimkovitz's 5th grade class in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm sorry, Mrs. S, if I mispronounced your name. It's a beautiful name. There's a lot of syllables. Why did you decide in Harbor Me to put the end of the story at the beginning? That's a really great question. I think that it's a story that's about looking back on a moment and seeing how important that moment was to becoming who you have become. And so for Haley, her life, she doesn't look back on, she knows she was very much in that moment when she was in it, but now the moment's passed and she's looking back on it. And I thought rather than just have, an easy way to write that book would just have been to have her go through chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, this happened and this happened and this happened. But then I wouldn't be able to get the reflection that I needed to get in the story of Haley now being older and being able to understand the story on a deeper level. So it'll be interesting for you readers to read the book now and then read it when you're in 7th grade and see what comes back to you about Harbor Me, or about your life in general. What does your life look like now in 5th grade? Now look at it in 7th when you get to 7th grade. If you're in 7th grade, now look at it when you get to 9th grade, and what do you know now that you didn't know then? Alsman at Hartnett Middle School. Do you base your books on your African heritage? My heritage is actually African American. And sadly, I don't know a lot about the African heritage because I am African American. And I base my books on a lot of things. And I definitely get information for my books from my experiences as an African American. But they're not based on just that. When you think of a story I wrote like 5th to 7th grade, Harbor Me, there's so many different characters in that book. Our Locomotion, our After Tupac and Dee Foster, there's a lot of different information coming from different cultures. That's not just the African American culture, but because I am African American and I'm telling you the story, it's coming through an African American perspective. So it's a complicated question. It's a fabulous question and a complicated one. I wish those questions were going slower, but I'll answer those. And from Darshani, also at Hartnett. How did you get information about your past? I asked lots of questions. I'm thinking you're asking for Brown Girl Dreaming. I went back, I interviewed my cousins in South Carolina. My mom, before she passed away when I was in the middle of writing Brown Girl Dreaming. I thought I was going to be able to ask her all these questions, but she died very suddenly. So I went back to South Carolina. I interviewed the cousins who had grown up with her. I interviewed her aunties. Then I interviewed all my siblings, Hope, Del, Roman. Then I went to Ohio and spent time with my dad and my aunt. And one thing you don't find out in Brown Girl Dreaming, when I was around 12 or 13, my mom and dad got back together. So from the time I was 13 onward, I would always go to Ohio and visit my aunt, spend time with my dad. My dad would take us back to his family. And then my aunt, Aunt Ada, is a genealogist. So she has the history of our family all the way back. So there was a lot of history that was already written down about the family. And then the rest I got from asking people lots of questions about what they remembered. Okay. Thanks. Okay, is Harbor Me about people you know? That's from Oxford Elementary School. No, I made those characters up, which is very hard to do. But I definitely put some of my friends' personality traits in some of the characters. And there's Jacqueline Woodson in every single one of those characters. P.S. MS 46. What is your writing process like? I really try to write every day. And I don't beat myself up if I don't. And I'm working on different things. I'm usually working, like right now, I'm working on a TED Talk. I'm working on a book for adults, and I'm working on a magazine article. But I really do try to write something every day. Kip School, DC, I see you. Thanks for your questions. Cami at McAllister Intermediate School. How did you become an author? By writing. I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And then when I felt like the first book I wrote, the first novel was a book called Last Summer with Mason. And I wrote it, rewrote it. Then an editor bought it, and then I had to rewrite it. And eventually it was published. And now, I don't know, almost 30 years later, I look at that book and I find stuff that I would still change, but I'm not going to change it. Hint, hint, what is the focus of your next novel? Well, the next novel that's for adults, starts during the Tulsa massacre and goes to 9/11. That's all I'm going to tell you. If you weren't an author, what other career would you have chosen? Kyle at Walter Brown Elementary. I would have been a teacher probably, or I would have played for the New York Knicks. Those are the two things. I really love basketball. What inspired you to write Each Kindness? I wanted to figure out, that's a great question. I was trying to think about the times people were unkind to me, and all I could come up with as a young person were all the times I was not kind to other people. And then I started realizing that at some point in our lives, we're Maya. At some point in our lives, we're Chloe. And this is the case for all of us. And so I started writing Each Kindness. Brown School are interested, the question went away, but hi, Brown School. Castle, PS 513, Castle Bridge. It's hard to read about people you know. Oxford Elementary. What was your inspiration for writing Harbor Me? Did I answer that? So my main inspiration for writing any book is I want to write a good book. I want to write a book that's going to keep me interested while I'm writing it. I want to write a book that answers some of the questions I have. And I feel like I started writing Harbor Me a long time ago. And it was basically a book about how do we talk to each other? And how do we talk to each other in a way that we can listen to each other and be heard? And the story became that. Are any of your books audiobooks? Yes, Brown Girl Dreaming is an audiobook. I read it. Harbor Me is an audiobook. I play the part of Miss Laverne. My daughter plays Holly. And at the end of it, there's a conversation between my son and I about the book. Arthur Ashe Jr. Elementary School. Hey, was there a reason for having 4 boys and 2 girls in the art room? What gave you the idea for the art room? Well, it started out as a real art room, and then it became a room to talk. But I felt like I've written so many girl characters, and as I was figuring out, at one point, the art room had 10 people in it. And then as I was figuring out who the characters were and why they were in the art room, it finally came down to those 6 that made the most sense to me. And I wasn't thinking about their genders that much. I was thinking about who they were. Ashton came to me, he was a boy. Tiago was a boy, Esteban. And then Holly and Haley were kind of the 2 girls that had been together forever. So came as almost this unit. But there are a lot of reasons for finally getting to those 6 kids. And I wish I had a whole other half hour to talk to you about it. What is my favorite sport? Both of my kids are fencers. So even though I don't fence, I spend a lot of time watching fencing, and I've come to really understand that sport. What is your favorite book you wrote? Is it Harbor Me? Chase from Capitol Hill Day School. Capitol Hill Day School. Is Harbor Me my favorite book? Is it yours, Chase? So I think I've done most of your questions. What's going to be the title of your next book? It's called Red at the Bone. Some of us know what that means. Some of us don't. My 6th graders at Brown School are interested to know if you are interested in writing a horror scary book. That's from Brooke. Nope. I'm such a scaredy cat. I don't like watching scary movies. I don't even like suspense. I can't do blood or gore, any of that. So I can't say never. I cannot say never about a lot of things, but I can say you will never see a horror book written by Jacqueline Woodson. What do you most hope readers will take away from your books? The thing I want is for you guys to read a story that you're really, really interested in, and then go off to have good conversation. That would be my dream, to hear young people talking about what the books make them think about, and how the books intersect with their own lives, or things that they know in the world. But mainly to read a good book that makes you feel some kind of way and think about some things. How old were you when you published your first book? I think I was about 20. Are any of your books being turned into movies? Abdul from Walter Brown Elementary. Supposedly, but who knows? I mean, books are always being turned into movies, but sometimes they don't happen. Hit the dab. What does that mean? I don't know. Who?
They want you to dab.
I think I'm out of time, but I am so excited talking to all of you guys, and your questions have been so great. So thanks so much. And the reason my eyes keep going there is that's where your questions are coming up. So I'm kind of all over the place, but have a great day and great talking to you. Take care.
Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. We're so grateful that you could be here and be part of this webcast with Jacqueline Woodson. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great afternoon. Bye.